What if the glamorous lives of your favorite old Hollywood icons were built on lies, cover-ups, and buried truths? These aren't just tabloid rumors. These are real, life-altering family secrets hidden for decades. Today, we're revealing 25 of the most shocking family secrets kept by Golden Age legends. Some will break your heart, others will blow your mind. Let's begin. 1. Marilyn Monroe. Before she was Marilyn Monroe, she was Norma Jean, a child born into chaos. Her mother, Gladys, was institutionalized early on, leaving little Norma to bounce between orphanages and foster homes. Studios later crafted Monroe's persona as a glamorous, desirable icon, but in reality, she was a traumatized child who never truly healed. Her biological father was a mystery she never solved. Monroe carried a photo of a man she believed to be him, though he denied paternity until his death. To shield her pain, she developed a breathy, innocent voice, a mask of sweetness to soothe the adults around her. She was married off at 16 to avoid returning to an orphanage, setting off a life filled with desperate relationships and emotional instability. Her tragic overdose at just 36 wasn't just the collapse of a career. It was the culmination of a lifetime of abandonment, mental health struggles, and identity loss. The world's most desired woman was never truly wanted as a child, and Hollywood never let her forget it. 2. Jack Nicholson. For 37 years, Jack Nicholson believed he had a fairly normal childhood. Raised in New Jersey by his mother, Ethel, and older sister, June, Nicholson had no reason to question anything. Until 1974, when a Time magazine reporter uncovered the truth. June was actually his biological mother, and Ethel was his grandmother. June had gotten pregnant as a teenager out of wedlock in 1937, and to avoid scandal, the family rewrote history. They convinced everyone, including Jack, of this version of reality. The deception was so well guarded that both women died before he learned the truth. In a later interview, Nicholson said, "It was a pretty dramatic event, but it wasn't what I'd call traumatizing. I was pretty well psychologically formed." Still, the revelation cast his childhood in a new light, leaving him to retroactively question the authenticity of his entire upbringing. The scandal was never publicized by studios, and Nicholson, the ultimate Hollywood rebel, never let it define him. But behind that smirking confidence was a man who grew up never truly knowing the most important woman in his life, his mother. 3. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth wasn't always Rita. She was born Margarita Carmen Cancino, the daughter of a Spanish dancer and a Ziegfeld girl. When Columbia Pictures saw potential in her beauty, but deemed her too ethnic for mass appeal, they subjected her to a transformation. Her hairline was painfully altered with electrolysis to make her look less Latin. Her dark locks were dyed auburn, and her name was erased and rewritten. But behind the makeover lay even deeper pain. Rita had been dancing with her father since she was 12, often performing in inappropriate adult venues. Privately, she confided in Orson Welles that her father had abused her. This wasn't just the erasure of cultural identity. It was the silencing of trauma. Her sultry, confident screen persona masked a terrified girl who had been exploited by the very people meant to protect her. "Men go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me," she once said, a tragic glimpse into a woman split in two. The public adored the illusion, but the real woman never felt seen. 4. Raymond Burr. Best known as the sharp-witted defense attorney in Perry Mason, Raymond Burr became a household name. But the image he built was a smokescreen, hiding a lifetime of secrets. To the public, Burr was a grieving widower and father. stories he himself told. He claimed his wife, Annette Sutherland, had died in a plane crash during World War II, and their only son had died of leukemia. None of it was true. Annette never existed. Neither did the child. Burr, a closeted gay man during a deeply intolerant time, created a fictional backstory to ward off questions about his bachelorhood. Behind the scenes, he shared a loving 35-year relationship with a man named Robert Benavides. They lived quietly on a vineyard, raising orchids and making wine. Hollywood never knew the truth. When asked too many questions, Burr simply replied, "I don't discuss that." The lies he crafted were born of necessity, a survival mechanism in an industry that would have destroyed him for being himself. But the man who invented imaginary children became a real-life hero to many, quietly supporting children's hospitals, funding scholarships, and sponsoring orphans. His hidden truth didn't make him less of a man. It made his generosity even more poignant. To millions, Judy Garland was the eternal Dorothy, sweet, innocent, pure. But her childhood was marked by away. Judy was just 4 when her family abruptly left Grand Rapids, Minnesota. The reason? Her father, Frank Gumm, was reportedly caught in inappropriate situations with young men. In the 1920s America, this wasn't just scandalous. It was career-ending and life-destroying. To escape the whispers, the Gumms fled to California, telling Judy they were chasing showbiz dreams. She never knew the real reason until she was older. The studio scrubbed all mentions of her father's rumored sexuality, crafting a squeaky clean image for their rising star. Yet Judy always felt the instability. Her parents' marriage was turbulent, her mother overbearing, and her father emotionally distant. He died suddenly when Judy was just 13. A loss that devastated her. MGM pushed her harder, keeping her working around the clock while she grieved. The unresolved trauma of her father's hidden truth and his sudden death planted the seeds of Judy's lifelong struggles with addiction, self-worth, and abandonment. The little girl who just wanted to go over the rainbow never stopped chasing a family that didn't truly exist. 6. Clark Gable and Loretta Young. In 1935, during the filming of The Call of the Wild, Clark Gable and Loretta Young shared more than screen time. They shared a secret. The result? A baby girl born out of wedlock. At the time, Gable was married, and Young was a devout Catholic. For an unwed actress to have a child would mean career suicide. And for Gable, it could mean public ruin. So, Young orchestrated an elaborate cover-up. She quietly left Hollywood for several months, gave birth in secret, and then placed the baby in an orphanage. Later, she adopted the girl, Judy Lewis, pretending she had no biological link to her. Gable never publicly acknowledged Judy, though he met her once when she was 15. For decades, Judy questioned her resemblance to the actor. The ears, the chin, the unmistakable Gable profile. Only in her 30s did Loretta finally admit the truth. The emotional cost was staggering. Judy spent years wrestling with identity confusion, abandonment, and betrayal. Loretta lived with guilt. Gable died never having taken responsibility. The studios knew but stayed silent. It was one of Hollywood's best-kept secrets, until the woman at the center of it finally spoke up. 7. Rock Hudson. In the 1950s, Rock Hudson was the epitome of the American leading man. Tall, square-jawed, and irresistibly charming. But behind that chiseled image lay a secret he was forced to bury. Hudson was gay. At a time when homosexuality could end careers, his agent and studio executives devised a plan. When rumors about his orientation began to circulate, they orchestrated a marriage, not out of love, but as a smokescreen. In 1955, Hudson wed his agent's secretary, Phyllis Gates. The marriage was short-lived, ending in divorce 3 years later. Gates later claimed she didn't know the truth at first, but others suggest she was fully complicit. Either way, it worked. Hudson's image was preserved. He lived a double life for decades, maintaining the illusion of heterosexual bachelorhood while privately seeking real companionship. It wasn't until 1985, when Hudson became the first major celebrity to announce he had AIDS, that the truth emerged. His diagnosis shattered taboos, humanized the disease, and helped kickstart a national conversation. Hudson had spent his entire career hiding who he was, but in his final act, he showed the world his truth and changed hearts in the process. 8. Merle Oberon. In the 1930s, audiences were captivated by Merle Oberon's exotic beauty, never suspecting the secret behind it. Publicity claimed she was born in Tasmania, of aristocratic British descent. But the truth was far more complicated and painful. Merle was actually born Estelle Merle O'Brien Thompson in Bombay, India, to a young mixed-race mother named Constance. Constance was just 14 at the time of Merle's birth, and her own stepfather was rumored to be the father. To protect Merle and preserve her chances at a future, the family rewrote reality. Her grandmother became her mother, and her mother was presented as her older sister. When Merle entered the film industry, this fiction continued. Her studio crafted an entirely false origin story, choosing Tasmania as her birthplace because it was hard to verify. The official records had been lost in a fire. She worked tirelessly to hide her true identity, even avoiding trips to Australia in case the lie unraveled. She underwent skin-lightening treatments, painful electrolysis, and strict lighting on film sets to mask her mixed-race heritage. Even her closest loved ones didn't know the truth. Merle carried this secret to protect a career that would have vanished if the public ever found out who she really was. 10. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford built her image as the ultimate self-made star, elegant, tough, and fiercely maternal. Her adoption of 4 children during the 1940s was portrayed as a selfless act by a woman giving love to those in need. Magazines showed photo spreads of Crawford in designer gowns reading bedtime stories. But the reality behind closed doors was far darker. According to her eldest daughter, Christina, Joan was abusive, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. In her memoir, Mommy Dearest, Christina described cruel punishments, including being beaten with wire hangers and forced nighttime cleaning rituals. Joan allegedly lashed out under stress, driven by alcohol and a need for control. The book sparked massive controversy after Crawford's death, with some of her other children denying the claims. Yet evidence later surfaced that at least 2 of her children had been adopted through Georgia Tann, a notorious child trafficker who placed babies with the rich and powerful through illegal means. Whether Crawford knew this is unclear, but the shadow it cast over her motherhood was undeniable. The star who portrayed iron-willed heroines on screen couldn't conquer the demons in her own home. Her carefully curated image as Hollywood's most glamorous mother now lives side by side with a haunting legacy. 11. Bing Crosby. To the public, Bing Crosby was the ultimate wholesome figure, a warm crooner who sang of white Christmases and family values. But behind the music, Crosby's home life was a stark contrast. His son Gary Crosby shattered the illusion with his 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, describing a childhood filled with fear. According to Gary, Bing was a strict disciplinarian who used belts and harsh punishments to enforce obedience. The Crosby household allegedly operated under rigid rules, including weekly weigh-ins and public shaming for gaining weight. Bing reportedly believed in discipline over affection, seeing emotion as weakness. Two of Gary's brothers later confirmed aspects of the abuse. Tragically, another son, Lindsay, died by suicide in 1989, one of several family tragedies that pointed toward deep dysfunction. Bing's second set of children with a different wife later painted a completely different portrait, describing him as warm, attentive, and involved. Perhaps Crosby had changed, but for his first family, the trauma never left. Hollywood ignored the contradictions, continuing to sell the image of Bing as America's favorite dad. But the scars left on his first children tell a haunting story. That even the most beloved public figures can harbor darkness no Christmas carol could ever drown out. 12. Judy Garland. Before she was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland was just little Frances Gumm, a girl from Minnesota born into a family running from scandal. Her father, Frank Gumm, was said to have engaged in inappropriate conduct with young men. In a conservative town and era, this wasn't just taboo, it was dangerous. To protect their reputation, the Gumm family fled to California under the pretense of seeking showbiz opportunities. Judy never learned the truth as a child. Instead, she grew up on MGM's sound stages, pushed relentlessly to perform. Behind the scenes, she dealt with family instability, a cold mother, and the absence of a father she adored but never fully understood. When Frank died suddenly when Judy was just 13, she was devastated and never truly recovered. The silence around his sexuality and behavior became part of the invisible weight Judy carried her whole life. She suffered from eating disorders, addiction, and chronic insecurity, much of it stemming from her fractured family and the Hollywood machine that commodified her pain. Judy's story wasn't just about fame, it was about a girl trying to survive secrets she was never allowed to speak of, secrets that outlived her and haunted her children. 13. Patty Duke. In 1970, 23-year-old Patty Duke was an Oscar-winning actress, and in the midst of a personal storm. Struggling with undiagnosed bipolar disorder, Duke found herself involved with 3 men in rapid succession: Desi Arnaz Jr., actor John Astin, and a virtual stranger named Michael Tell, who was subletting her apartment. When she became pregnant, she impulsively married Tell in a manic episode. The marriage lasted just 13 days. Initially, Duke claimed John Astin was the father, and he eventually adopted the child, Sean Astin, and raised him as his own. But when Sean was a teenager, Duke confided she believed Desi Arnaz Jr. was actually his biological father. The confusion plagued Sean until DNA testing revealed the shocking truth. Michael Tell, the man Duke barely knew, was the biological father all along. The emotional whiplash left a lasting mark on all involved. Yet John Astin remained a devoted father figure, and Duke's transparency about her bipolar disorder helped destigmatize mental illness in Hollywood. 14. Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis was the face of compassion, the tireless host of telethons for muscular dystrophy, the clown who brought joy to millions. But offstage, he carried a secret that contradicted everything he stood for. Susan Minaret claimed to be Lewis's illegitimate daughter, born in 1952 from an affair between the comedian and model Lynn Dixon. For decades, Minaret attempted to contact Lewis, pleading for acknowledgement, a meeting, a paternity test, all denied. Lewis never publicly addressed her existence and omitted her entirely from his estate. DNA tests conducted in 2009 confirmed a high probability that he was her father. What made the story sting even more was Lewis's treatment of his acknowledged children, particularly his sons from his first marriage, who were also disinherited. While he raised billions for Jerry's kids through charity, his biological children, including the one he never accepted, suffered in silence. Susan struggled with illness and poverty, while her alleged father lived in wealth and fame. The disconnect between his public compassion and private coldness was jarring. For many, it forced a difficult re-evaluation. Could someone bring hope to millions while breaking the hearts of those closest to him? In Lewis's case, the answer remains heartbreakingly complex. 15. Gene Tierney. Gene Tierney was one of Hollywood's most luminous stars, famous for her beauty, elegance, and haunting performance in Laura. But behind her perfect face was a devastating family secret born from a fan's selfish act. In 1943, while pregnant, Tierney contracted rubella after a fan, who had broken quarantine to meet her, hugged her at a USO event. The virus severely affected her unborn child. Tierney's daughter, Daria, was born deaf, partially blind, and developmentally disabled. Rather than face public scrutiny or industry backlash, Tierney quietly placed Daria in a private care facility and continued working. The studio spun a narrative of professional dedication, never revealing the personal tragedy behind her eyes. Tierney was consumed by guilt. She suffered multiple mental breakdowns and underwent electroshock therapy, which erased years of memories. It wasn't until she published her autobiography in 1979 that the truth finally came out. Her anguish was so profound that Agatha Christie based her novel The Mirror Cracked on Tierney's story. Gene Tierney's beauty became her shield, but behind it was a mother mourning the life her daughter never got to live. All because a fan refused to stay home. It was a tragedy wrapped in glamour, and one Hollywood never dared to discuss. 16. Clara Bow dazzled the roaring 20s with her vivacious charm and flapper energy, becoming America's first it girl. But behind her playful grin and wild persona was a childhood straight out of a nightmare. Born in a Brooklyn tenement in 1905, Clara was raised in extreme poverty. Her mother, Sarah, suffered from severe mental illness and once tried to kill Clara in her sleep with a butcher knife. Her father, Robert, was no safer. Clara later revealed he had assaulted her. These traumas were buried deep by the studios, who remade her into a fantasy of carefree youth. On set, Clara was anxious, frequently suffering breakdowns, and often misunderstood as erratic. In truth, she was likely dealing with undiagnosed PTSD. Her illiteracy was mocked by the press, while her troubled past was completely erased by Paramount's publicity machine. When the silent era ended, so did her career. Clara retired at just 28 and disappeared from public view. Her decline was attributed to nerves, but the reality was she had survived the unimaginable and could no longer keep pretending. Her dazzling screen presence was a mask, worn by a girl who had never known safety or love. The it girl had been broken long before Hollywood discovered her. 17. Bobby Darin was the ultimate 1950s showman. Confident, electric, a star from the moment he sang his first note. But in 1968, his world imploded. At age 32, Darin discovered that the woman he believed was his mother, Polly, was actually his grandmother. His sister, Nina? She was his real mother. Nina had become pregnant at 17, and fearing shame and scandal, passed her child off to her mother to raise. Bobby was the product of a lie that had lasted his entire life. When he learned the truth, he reportedly locked himself in a room for days and emerged forever changed. The swaggering performer grew a mustache, turned away from pop music, and embraced folk songs and political causes. Friends say he was never quite the same. Already battling a weak heart from childhood rheumatic fever, the psychological blow added to his decline. Darin died just 5 years later at the age of 37 during open-heart surgery. In the end, the man who lived every moment like he was running out of time was. But what cut deepest wasn't just the ticking clock. It was the knowledge that the person he trusted most had built his life on a lie. A heartbreaking reminder that identity can be shattered in a moment. 18. Lon Chaney Senior. Lon Chaney Senior, known as the Man of a Thousand Faces, was revered for his haunting performances in The Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. His mastery of silent, emotional acting was unmatched, and the reason behind it was hidden in plain sight. Both of Chaney's parents were deaf. Born in 1883, Lon grew up in a household where silence was normal and sign language was the only form of communication. In a world that often ridiculed or pitied deaf people, Chaney fiercely protected his parents' dignity. He never publicly revealed their condition during his lifetime, fearing the stigma it might bring. His skill in pantomime and facial expression didn't come from acting school. It came from childhood necessity. He had learned to speak volumes without words long before he stepped onto a film set. Even in Hollywood, few knew his family's secret. When his first wife discovered his parents were deaf, she reportedly reacted with disgust, a moment that marked the beginning of the end of their marriage. Chaney's performances were often of tragic, misunderstood characters, a reflection of his deep empathy and the invisible walls his own family had faced. His silence was his strength and his secret. 19th. Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman wasn't just loved, she was idolized. The Swedish beauty who charmed audiences in Casablanca and Gaslight was seen as the embodiment of purity. But in 1949, she did something unthinkable. She followed her heart. While still married, she fell in love with Italian director Roberto Rossellini while filming Stromboli. She became pregnant before securing a divorce, and when the affair became public, America turned on her. She was denounced on the floor of the U.S. Senate as a powerful influence for evil and blacklisted from Hollywood. Studios distanced themselves. Fans burned her photos. The scandal was so intense, she fled the country and didn't return to American screens for 7 years. During her exile, she had 3 children with Rossellini, including future actress Isabella Rossellini. Eventually, she returned with Anastasia in 1956 and won an Oscar. Her comeback was hailed as triumphant, but the scars remained. What had been forgiven in male stars was nearly career-ending for her. Bergman's secret wasn't that she loved. It was that she refused to hide it. Her punishment? Public humiliation and exile. But she stood firm. Her love affair may have cost her years in Hollywood, but it won her the freedom to live on her own terms. 20th. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was the man who made the world laugh, but his personal life tells a far more troubling story. In 1924, at age 35, Chaplin began a relationship with 16-year-old actress Lita Gray, who was cast in The Gold Rush. When she became pregnant, Chaplin faced the possibility of criminal charges under California law. In a rush to avoid prosecution and public disgrace, he married Gray in a secret ceremony in Mexico. What followed was a disastrous marriage plagued by jealousy, infidelity, and abuse. Lita later claimed that Chaplin had pressured her into an illegal abortion before she became pregnant again, and that he was emotionally cruel and controlling. Their divorce in 1927 was one of the most scandalous in Hollywood history. Lita's legal filings were explosive, but Chaplin's immense popularity, combined with powerful studio backing, allowed him to weather the storm. The public saw only the lovable tramp. They never saw the man accused of manipulating young girls and discarding them when they no longer served his image. Chaplin would go on to marry again. His final wife, Una O'Neill, was just 18 when he was 54. His brilliance as an artist remains unquestioned, but the private choices he made with much younger women cast a long, troubling shadow over his legacy. 21st. Gloria Grahame. Gloria Grahame won an Oscar for The Bad and the Beautiful and became one of film noir's most alluring stars. But her personal life eventually became a scandal that destroyed her career. In 1948, she married director Nicholas Ray. Their relationship was turbulent, but the most shocking part came when Ray allegedly caught Gloria in bed with his 13-year-old son, Tony, her stepson. The incident remained a rumor, carefully buried by the studios. But the truth exploded a decade later. In 1960, Gloria secretly married Tony Ray in Mexico. He was now 23. She was 37. The press uncovered their marriage during a bitter custody battle between Gloria and her third husband, Cy Howard, over their daughter. The revelation shocked even jaded Hollywood insiders. Gloria had not only seduced her stepson, she had married him. Their relationship lasted 14 years, but her career never recovered. Studios blacklisted her, and she was forced to take roles in obscure productions and eventually stage work in the UK. Once praised for her smoldering charisma, she spent her later years dogged by whispers and disgrace. The woman who once lit up the screen had become a cautionary tale. The secret love that once stayed hidden ultimately consumed her entire public identity. 22nd. Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara Stanwyck was the ultimate Hollywood survivor, a tough, steely actress beloved for her strength on screen. But behind the image lay a tragic maternal story she never wanted the public to see. In 1932, during a crumbling marriage with actor Frank Fay, Stanwyck adopted a 10-month-old boy named Dion. When the marriage ended in divorce just 3 years later, she retained custody. Yet, despite her early devotion, their bond deteriorated as Dion grew older. Reports say Stanwyck struggled to connect emotionally with the boy. As he reached adolescence, their relationship became strained, then fractured. By adulthood, Dion was completely estranged from his mother. When asked about him in later interviews, Stanwyck curtly said, "I have no son." That was no figure of speech. In her will, she left Dion just $5,000, the legal minimum to prevent a contest. The rest of her multi-million-dollar estate went to staff, charities, and her longtime publicist. The silence surrounding their rift suggests something deeper than a typical family squabble. Some biographers suggest Dion struggled with substance abuse. Others claim Stanwyck, herself abandoned as a child, never knew how to show maternal warmth. The star who played fiercely loyal mothers on screen died having pushed away the only child she ever had. 23rd. Gary Cooper. Gary Cooper was the epitome of masculine grace, tall, stoic, and dignified. But behind his all-American image was a love story wrapped in secrecy and sorrow. In 1949, Cooper began an affair with the much younger actress Patricia Neal while filming The Fountainhead. Their chemistry was electric, and their relationship lasted several years, despite Cooper being married. The affair escalated when Neal became pregnant with Cooper's child. Terrified of the public fallout and under pressure from Cooper, Neal underwent an illegal abortion, a decision she later described as the greatest regret of her life. Cooper's wife, Veronica, found out and threatened to destroy Neal's career. Cooper chose his marriage, ending the affair and recommitting to Catholicism. Neal was devastated. She suffered a breakdown and withdrew from Hollywood for a time. The studios remained silent, protecting their golden boy. The secret remained buried until decades later, when Neal revealed the truth in her memoir. Cooper never publicly acknowledged what had happened, but friends say he carried the guilt to his grave. The romantic hero audiences adored had privately betrayed the woman who loved him most, and it haunted both of them for the rest of their lives. 24. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge was the first African-American woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar, a radiant star who broke barriers and mesmerized the world. But her rise came at a devastating personal cost. In 1943, while at the height of her fame, Dandridge gave birth to her only child, Marilyn, who was born severely brain-damaged after Dorothy contracted measles during pregnancy. The child would never be able to speak or live independently. Fearing career damage, Dandridge's team advised her to hide the truth. Marilyn was placed in an institution and rarely mentioned in public. Studios continued, promoting Dandridge as the elegant, exotic leading lady, never the grieving, exhausted mother, battling loneliness and guilt. The cost of Marilyn's care, combined with exploitative managers and limited opportunities for black actresses, left Dorothy financially broken. She died at 42 in a small West Hollywood apartment, surrounded not by accolades, but by silence. The child she loved was hidden from the world, and her legacy was nearly lost. Today, Dandridge is remembered as a pioneer, but the pain she endured behind the scenes tells a deeper story. One of a woman torn between the daughter she couldn't save, and the dream Hollywood never fully let her have. 25th. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was known as one of the most beautiful women to ever grace the screen, the ultimate Hollywood bombshell. But beneath her glamour lay a secret identity no one believed: inventor. During World War II, Lamarr co-developed a technology called frequency hopping, a method of secure communication that later became the basis for Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth. She held the patent but was dismissed by military officials who refused to believe an actress could contribute anything serious to science. Even worse, the patent expired before the tech boom, meaning Lamarr never saw a dime from her invention. Her intellectual side was buried beneath her screen persona. Studios discouraged her from speaking publicly about science, afraid it would confuse her image. Later in life, Lamarr retreated from the spotlight, disillusioned and penniless, while the world unknowingly relied on her invention. She died in 2000, only receiving proper recognition posthumously. The woman hailed for her face was never valued for her mind. Her family secret wasn't one of shame, but of brilliance hidden by a system that only wanted her beauty. Today, every time we connect to a wireless signal, we owe a silent debt to a woman Hollywood never truly understood. These 25 hidden family secrets reveal that even the most dazzling stars of Hollywood's golden age carried burdens too heavy for the spotlight. Behind every perfect photograph and public romance were truths buried in silence, shame, or survival. If you found these revelations compelling, like, subscribe, and comment below. Which story surprised you most? Until next time, this is Golden Age Files.